The night sky above Hawaii was silent, vast, and endless. A black ocean scattered with the faint shimmer of stars. On the slopes of Mauna Loa, the asteroid terrestrial impact last alert system, known simply as ATLAS, scanned the heavens with unwavering precision. Each night, its telescopes turned their gaze upward, searching for anything new, anything moving, the faint signature of a visitor crossing the solar sea. The purpose was simple yet profound: to detect dangers before they found us, to watch the sky for threats that might fall from space. But on this night, what Atlas found was not a threat. It was something stranger, something that had never belonged to our solar system at all. The signal appeared faintly at first, just a small moving point against the still background of stars. To most, it would have gone unnoticed, buried in the endless data collected every night. But when the observatory's computers compared it to the catalog of known asteroids and comets, the object didn't fit. Its motion was too fast, its path too shallow. The algorithms flagged it as unusual, and within hours, astronomers were rechecking the numbers by hand. They expected a minor error, a calibration issue, perhaps a satellite glint. Instead, they found something remarkable. The object's orbit wasn't elliptical, like a comet bound to the sun's gravity, nor was it parabolic, as if just grazing the solar edge. It was hyperbolic. That single word, hyperbolic, carried extraordinary meaning. It meant this object was not bound by the sun. It had come from elsewhere, from the great unknown between the stars, passing through our system on a one-way journey. The discovery spread quickly through astronomical networks. Observatories from Chile to Spain, from Arizona to South Africa, turned their instruments toward the new visitor. The official designation soon followed: 3I/ATLAS, also known as C2025N1. The Chia 3I stood for Third Interstellar Object, following in the cosmic footsteps of Oumuamua and Borisov. Humanity had only just begun to glimpse such travelers, and now another had appeared, silent, ancient, and mysterious. As the data poured in, scientists began to trace its path. It seemed to have entered our solar system from the direction of Lyra, the same constellation that cradles Vega, one of the brightest stars in the northern sky. 3I/ATLAS was cutting through the plane of the planets at a steep angle, as though slipping through a cosmic door no one had known was open. Its projected journey would take it between the orbits of Earth and Mars, never coming closer than 1.8 astronomical units, a safe distance, twice as far as the sun from our world. It would warm briefly as it passed, releasing gases and dust, a faint, icy whisper before fading again into the dark. Yet even from afar, 3I/ATLAS was unlike anything seen before. Its light signature revealed a rich abundance of carbon dioxide and a surprising scarcity of water, a chemical fingerprint alien to most comets of our system. The Hubble Space Telescope glimpsed a delicate coma surrounding it, and JWST detected faint traces of cyanide gas and nickel vapor. Every molecule it released carried information about the place it was born, perhaps around another star, billions of years ago, in a time before Earth itself had formed. It was, quite literally, matter from another world. One of the astronomers who worked on its observation later described the feeling as watching a ghost drift through the solar system. The data didn't just show movement, it told a story. The object's speed, over 60 kilometers per second, meant it had been traveling for eons, wandering through interstellar space since before the birth of our sun. To observe it was to look into the deep history of the galaxy itself, a fragment of something ancient, flung out long ago and now brushing past our corner of the cosmos by chance. The eccentricity of its orbit, a measure of how stretched and open it was, told the rest of the story. For nearly every object bound to the sun, that number is less than 1. For 3I/Atlas, it was greater. It would come once, curve around our star, and then leave forever, never to return. The realization filled astronomers with both awe and melancholy. This was a meeting that would last mere months, a brief intersection between two cosmic journeys that would never cross again. But somewhere between the numbers and the wonder, another thought began to take shape, a quiet, unspoken curiosity that always follows discovery. What if things had been different? What if this interstellar wanderer, instead of passing harmlessly between Mars and Earth, had its path altered, slightly, impossibly, by some unseen force, a tiny gravitational tug, a fragment of dust, a coincidence? What if, against all odds, its trajectory had shifted, and it was now heading directly toward us? It is from that question that this story unfolds, not as science, but as possibility. Because in the infinite vastness of space, even the impossible deserves to be imagined. And so we ask, what if 3I/Atlas didn't pass us by, but came home instead? At first, the orbit of 3I/Atlas seemed stable and distant, a cold, predictable sweep through the inner solar system that would leave humanity untouched. But the cosmos has never promised predictability. It is a place of chance and gravity, where the smallest forces can rewrite the grandest paths. In this imagined timeline, the trajectory of 3I/Atlas begins to shift. Not by much, just a fraction of a degree. Perhaps the outgassing of sublimating ice nudged it slightly off course, a jet of vapor bursting from a crack on its icy surface, steering the comet the way breath pushes a feather. Or perhaps an unnoticed fragment of rock or dust, drifting unseen between Mars and Jupiter, brushed against its coma, transferring an invisible whisper of momentum. Whatever the cause, the result is almost imperceptible. Almost. Across millions of kilometers, that tiny deviation becomes meaningful. A small push, multiplied by cosmic distances, bends the line of fate. The orbital models begin to diverge, and somewhere in the quiet glow of an observatory screen, a researcher notices something strange. The projected path, once a harmless arc between Mars and Earth, now crosses directly through our planet's orbit. It's still a long way off, months, maybe years, but the numbers tell a story that chills the air in the control room. 3I/Atlas is no longer just a visitor, it's inbound. As the simulations run, the full picture emerges. The comet, roughly 1 kilometer wide, hurtles toward the inner solar system at nearly 60 kilometers per second, more than 200,000 kilometers per hour. At that speed, it would cross the distance from the moon to Earth in just over 6 hours. It is a bullet of ice and rock, forged under an alien sun, carrying within it the history of a foreign world. And now, it is on a direct course with ours. Scientists across the globe scramble to verify the data. Observatories in Chile, Spain, and Arizona confirm the trajectory. Radio telescopes detect the faint thermal signature of the comet's coma expanding as it heats. Spectrographs capture flashes of carbon dioxide and cyanide in its tail. The world's space agencies issue joint statements, careful, measured, clinical, but behind the words is panic. The probability of impact, once effectively zero, now rises with each passing observation. The world watches as the numbers crawl upward. 1 in 1,000, 1 in 100, 1 in 10. Then certainty. For the first time in recorded history, humanity faces an interstellar impactor, not from our own solar neighborhood, but from the dark between the stars. The sheer velocity means that no known deflection method can work. Nuclear detonations, gravity tractors, kinetic impactors, all would require decades of preparation. We have months. Some nations attempt emergency missions anyway, desperate to alter fate. But the comet's speed and distance make interception almost impossible. Every solution collapses under the weight of time. As the days pass, telescopes capture increasingly detailed images. 3I/Atlas grows brighter, more defined. Its nucleus is small, less than a kilometer across, but its coma stretches tens of thousands of kilometers, glowing faintly green as cyanide gas fluoresces in sunlight. To the naked eye, it becomes visible as a pale smudge in the night sky, moving a little more each evening. People gather in fields, cities, rooftops, staring upward at the strange visitor. News channels call it the alien comet, the messenger, the third signal. Religious leaders call for prayer. Scientists call for calm. Poets and philosophers whisper that perhaps the universe is only reclaiming what it once sent away. As the comet approaches, the Earth rotates beneath its descending path, unaware of how narrow the line between chance and doom has become. In classrooms, children trace its orbit on projected maps. In laboratories, physicists run endless models. In space agencies, the screens flicker with countdowns. Somewhere above the Pacific Ocean, a faint glint appears against the stars. Sunlight reflecting off an object moving impossibly fast. The interstellar traveler, having wandered for billions of years, is now only days away from the planet that named it. The strange beauty of the moment is undeniable. The thought that a fragment of another world, born around another star, could find its end here, on Earth, feels almost poetic. And yet, behind that poetry lies terror. Because 3I/Atlas is not a falling star. It is a mountain moving at cosmic speed. When it strikes, the energy released will be beyond imagination, billions of times more powerful than any bomb humanity has ever built. It will not simply destroy a region or a nation, but alter the planet itself. As the final orbits are calculated, there is no longer any doubt. The comet's trajectory will intersect Earth's surface over the Pacific Basin. The date of impact is fixed, the time precise to the second. Humanity stands beneath a sky that now carries a visible wound, a glowing trail that widens each night. The visitor from the stars has found its mark. And so, the countdown begins. Not of hours or minutes, but of an entire species holding its breath beneath an alien light. The final days before impact are eerily quiet. Humanity has never been so united in awareness. Billions of eyes watching the same patch of sky. Billions of hearts beating in synchronized fear. The comet now dominates the heavens, a streak of pale blue-white cutting across the darkness. By day, it can still be seen, faint and ghostly near the sun, trailing a shimmering tail that stretches for millions of kilometers. Its motion is perceptible now, not the slow drift of a planet, but the deliberate, unstoppable approach of something alive with momentum. The name 3I/Atlas, once confined to observatories and journals, is now spoken in every language. It has become the final headline, the last shared thought of a civilization staring at its reflection in the void. In the hours before impact, the comet passes the moon's orbit, and the laws of the universe reveal their indifference. Gravity takes command. The object's velocity climbs beyond 60 kilometers per second, tearing through space faster than anything human hands have ever built. Its nucleus, less than a kilometer wide, now glows fiercely as sunlight strikes its spinning, venting surface. Streams of vapor and dust blast from fissures in its crust, trailing behind it like wings. The coma flares brighter than Venus. In cities, people crowd rooftops and beaches. In the countryside, they sit beneath the night sky, holding hands, speaking softly, waiting. There is no escaping an impact of this scale. No bunker, no border, no wall. At 4:27 UTC, the first atmospheric detectors record the entry. The upper layers of the atmosphere ignite around the intruder as it compresses the air in front of it, turning invisible gases into a plasma wave hotter than the surface of the sun. The night sky flashes white, brighter than daylight. Shadows vanish. For a moment, the entire horizon burns. In its final seconds, 3IATLAS begins to fragment, immense shards breaking away as forces beyond comprehension tear it apart. Each fragment remains enormous, each one a separate catastrophe. Together, they descend as a chain of fire across the Pacific sky. The impact is instantaneous on a human scale. In less than a second, the first fragment strikes the ocean west of the Mariana Trench, releasing energy equivalent to billions of megatons of TNT. The sea, for hundreds of kilometers around, vaporizes in an expanding ring of steam and flame. The shockwave races outward at hypersonic speed, displacing the atmosphere, flattening the clouds, and shattering the stratosphere. Moments later, the second fragment follows, and then the third, until the ocean itself becomes a wound, a vast circular scar of molten rock and vapor, glowing white-hot beneath the atmosphere's torn veil. The sound reaches the coasts minutes later, a deep, rolling thunder that seems to come from the bones of the earth. In Japan, in California, in New Zealand, windows burst. The air itself becomes a weapon, traveling faster than any storm, flattening forests, lifting cities from their foundations. A wall of water, born from the energy of the strike, begins its terrible journey across the Pacific. It will take hours to reach distant shores, but its promise is certain. The tsunami rises higher than mountains, carrying fragments of continents within its churning crest. Above the planet, satellites flicker and fail as radiation floods the upper atmosphere. The impact plume climbs beyond the stratosphere, a column of incandescent vapor punching into space. From orbit, it looks like a blooming flower of light, a wound radiating outward in concentric circles. Within minutes, debris begins to fall back to Earth, raining molten rock and glass across the hemisphere. Fires ignite across thousands of kilometers. The air darkens with ash and dust. The day ends not with sunset, but with silence. In the aftermath of the first hour, the Earth's rotation trembles. The oceans boil where the comet struck, their heat rising in storms that encircle the globe. The impact has released energy beyond measure, enough to melt crust, to shift tectonic plates, to birth earthquakes that ripple through the core itself. Whole regions sink as others rise. The delicate balance of the biosphere collapses under a sky now blackened by soot. The sun, once blinding, becomes a dim red disk behind layers of ash. The temperature begins to fall. For the few who remain alive in the first days, the world becomes unrecognizable. The stars vanish behind the thick blanket of particles suspended high above. The rain that follows is acidic and dark, carrying the dust of an alien world that has merged with ours. Plants wither, the oceans turn opaque, the surface temperature drops by tens of degrees. What had once been cities are now glowing outlines beneath ash, visible only when lightning flashes through the smoke. Somewhere deep in the ruins of a data center, machines still record. The last automated telescopes capture the aftermath, not to warn, but to witness. In their silent data streams, they show the truth. The interstellar traveler has ended its journey. 3I/Atlas, born under another star, carried across the cold for billions of years, has met its fate here on a small blue world that once watched it through telescopes. The impact is both destruction and reunion, a fragment of the galaxy returning to the dust from which all things came. And as the fires dim and the winds subside, the Earth begins its long, slow silence. The radio static fades, the signals stop, the planet turns, still and dark, beneath the shroud of its own atmosphere. Somewhere in that darkness, a single whisper might still be heard. Not a voice, but an echo, the last transmission of a civilization that once looked to the stars and asked, "What if?" The world after impact is unrecognizable. The first dawn that follows is not dawn at all, but a weak, rust-colored glow diffused through a sky heavy with ash. The sun, once the giver of all warmth, now hangs as a faint ember behind a suffocating veil. The air is cold, dry, and thick with dust. Silence dominates the continents. No engines, no birdsong, no human voices. The earth, once alive with color and sound, has become still, wrapped in a blanket of shadow that turns day into twilight and night into endless darkness. Where the comet struck, the Pacific is gone. In its place lies a vast scar, a molten wound that stretches hundreds of kilometers across, still glowing from within, its surface a mix of rock, metal, and glass fused by unimaginable heat. Around its edges, the ocean boils. The air above it shimmers with toxic steam, and lightning dances constantly across the roiling clouds, each flash illuminating the ghostly remnants of the world that was. The energy of the impact has thrown trillions of tons of vaporized water and rock into the upper atmosphere, forming a dense canopy that will take decades to fall. It will rain for years, not the gentle rain that nurtures life, but black rain, acidic and heavy, laced with the chemical remnants of a comet born under another sun. The immediate survivors, scattered and few, face a planet that no longer knows them. Crops wither under the dim light. Animals vanish into the darkness, their instincts failing in the absence of seasons. Temperatures plummet by the day, and what was once summer becomes winter without end. Forests die first, their leaves shedding like ashes, followed by the collapse of grasslands and farmlands. Rivers slow, freeze, and disappear beneath ice. Cities are entombed in dust. The light that once powered the world's machines and civilizations is replaced by the faint blue flicker of auroras, dancing silently above an atmosphere still trembling from the impact's rage. Across the decades that follow, the earth sinks into its long slumber. The ashes settle slowly, blanketing continents and oceans alike, sealing away the remnants of what was. The great structures of humanity, towers, monuments, bridges, vanish beneath layers of sediment and ice. The echoes of civilization fade into whispers, carried by cold winds that sweep across the desolation. Yet beneath the surface, in the deep oceans and geothermal vents, life endures. Tiny organisms, shielded from the fury above, continue their ancient dance of survival. In their DNA lies resilience, the same resilience that once sparked the first breath of life billions of years ago. They do not know of the comet, nor of the civilization that named it. They simply persist, waiting for the world to warm again. Centuries pass, the skies begin to clear. The thick canopy of ash, once impenetrable, thins as gravity draws the last of the particles down. The sun returns, faint at first, then stronger, cutting through the haze to reveal a changed earth. The oceans, once black, shimmer again, though altered in chemistry and depth. New shorelines emerge where old continents sank. Mountains have shifted, torn and reshaped by seismic violence. Rivers carve fresh paths through the layers of ash. The planet breathes once more, exhaling the ghosts of its past. In the warmth that follows, the ice begins to melt. Water floods the lowlands, bringing with it the first signs of renewal. Mosses and bacteria colonize the barren rock, feeding on minerals left behind by the comet's ashes. Slowly, over millennia, these pioneers transform the planet's surface, laying the foundation for life to rise again. From the sterile plains of the north to the glass fields of the Pacific Basin, the first green hues return, faint, fragile, yet unstoppable. Evolution stirs from its long sleep. Somewhere within the newly formed atmosphere, the balance shifts. The carbon and nitrogen released by the comet's vapor mix with Earth's air, altering its chemistry. The planet, once devastated, becomes fertile in strange new ways. Perhaps, in this altered chemistry, something unique begins to form. New compounds, new life, born from both terrestrial and interstellar origins. The comet, once a destroyer, becomes a giver. Its dust, rich in alien carbon, seeds the soil and the seas with elements unseen on Earth before. In its ruin, it plants the future. Millions of years later, the memory of the impact is buried deep beneath rock and ocean. The scar that once burned across the Pacific has become a vast circular sea, bordered by young continents, rich with minerals and strange new life forms. The sky is blue again, the air warm. From above, the planet looks whole, as if nothing ever happened. But deep within its crust, layers of fused glass and iridium tell the story, a silent geological record of the day when two worlds met. Perhaps one day, far in the future, another intelligence will rise on this planet, a species born from the survivors of the darkness, standing beneath the same stars, looking outward once more. They may uncover the traces of that day, the glassy crater, the buried metals, the faint radiation frozen in ancient stone, and wonder what it meant. They might build telescopes of their own, searching the night sky for visitors, and find one, moving faintly between the stars, on another long, impossible journey. And maybe in that moment, they will whisper the same question humanity once asked: what if? The echo of that question will drift endlessly through time, as timeless as the dust between the stars. For in the grand story of the universe, endings are never truly ends. The death of one world becomes the seed of another. The silence after catastrophe gives birth to music once again. And in that music, the soft hum of oceans, the rustle of new leaves, the pulse of unknown creatures beneath alien skies, the memory of 3IATLAS endures. It will not be remembered as a destroyer nor a punishment, but as a reminder that we are part of something vast and connected, that the dust of our planet and the dust of interstellar comets are one and the same. It will be a message, carried not by language but by matter itself, the quiet truth that from destruction comes creation, and that even in the darkest night, the universe continues to dream. In the silence that followed the storm, the earth seemed to breathe again. Slow, shallow, uncertain. The fires had burned themselves to embers, the skies still heavy with drifting ash. But beneath that darkness, beneath the scars and the silence, there was still motion. Tiny currents of wind moved through the valleys of dust. Waves lapped against the new shorelines carved by chaos. The planet, wounded and altered, remained alive in its own way. It had endured worse before. It would endure again. If there was a message in the arrival of 3I/Atlas, it was not written in language or numbers. It was carved in consequence. Humanity, in its brief span of existence, had often believed the universe revolved around its consciousness, that the stars existed to be seen, the cosmos to be understood. But the comet told another story. It reminded us that the universe is vast, ancient, and indifferent, that it creates and destroys with the same motion, without malice, without mercy. To the stars, our greatest achievements were flickers. To time, our history was a breath. Yet in that breath, we were aware. And perhaps that awareness was the universe recognizing itself, if only for a moment. 3IATLAS was a visitor, a traveler born before our sun, shaped by a star that had long since died. For billions of years, it drifted through the cold, carrying with it the dust of forgotten worlds, the frozen memory of systems that once glowed with life. It crossed the emptiness not to destroy, but simply to continue its journey, a fragment of something infinite, obeying gravity's ancient script. When it came to us, it brought with it a reflection that we too were wanderers, that everything we are, our bodies, our thoughts, our stories, are built from the same cosmic dust, the same atomic remnants scattered by old stars. Perhaps the message was never meant to be heard, only felt. In its destruction, 3I/Atlas returned us to the truth that the universe gives and takes in equal measure. That creation requires destruction, and that death itself is only a transformation. The same energy that tore apart our world once ignited suns. The same dust that buried our cities will someday form new worlds, new skies, new beginnings. From the universe's view, there is no tragedy, only motion, only change. If humanity had survived long enough to understand this fully, perhaps we would have seen the comet not as an omen, but as a mirror, a reminder that our search for meaning has always been an echo of the cosmos searching for itself, that our telescopes, our mathematics, our poetry, all were ways of translating the same eternal question. Why are we here? And perhaps 3I/Atlas was the answer, spoken in the language of silence and gravity. You are here because the universe needed to know itself. In the distant future, when the dust settles and the oceans calm, when new forms of life crawl from the darkness and reach toward the light, the remnants of that message will still exist. The elements carried by 3I/Atlas, the carbon, the metals, the frozen molecules of another sun, will have merged with Earth's soil and sea. They will flow through roots and rivers, through the veins of whatever life comes next. And in those creatures, in their pulse and movement, the story of 3I/Atlas will continue, not as a tale of ruin, but as the inheritance of the stars. Every end writes its own beginning. Every silence contains a note of music waiting to return. Humanity may be gone, but its essence, its curiosity, its defiance, its longing to understand, has been absorbed into the very matter of the planet it once called home. Perhaps that is immortality, not in monuments or machines, but in the quiet diffusion of our existence into everything. Far above, the universe carries on. New stars ignite, old ones fade. In the endless dark, other comets wander between systems, silent messengers carrying fragments of life, possibility, and memory. Somewhere among them, there may be another traveler, one that will one day pass close to a world full of listeners, a world that still wonders if it is alone. And when that happens, perhaps that world will point its telescopes upward, detect the faint light of an object from beyond its sky, and whisper the same words we once did. You're listening to the universe. For that is what we always were, listeners in the dark, translating the static of creation into meaning, shaping chaos into story, turning silence into song. The comet came and we were gone, but the song remains, drifting endlessly between the stars. Long before Earth formed, before the sun ignited, before our galaxy took its current shape, something moved in the dark. It was small, no larger than a mountain, a frozen shard of rock and ice wandering between the newborn stars. This was 3I/Atlas, though no one had yet named it. It had no purpose, no direction, only momentum, the inheritance of a collision, the echo of an ending. Somewhere far away in a corner of the Milky Way, a young star system had been torn apart. Two suns danced too close, and gravity, impatient and merciless, tore the planets from their orbits. In the chaos, fragments were hurled into the void, some shattered, some lost to darkness, and one began its slow exile into the infinite. It drifted for billions of years, crossing the spiral arms of the galaxy, passing through clouds of gas and fields of debris left by other forgotten worlds. Its surface was etched by starlight and cosmic radiation, scarred by time itself. Occasionally, it passed close enough to distant stars to be illuminated for a moment, to cast a faint shadow upon the interstellar dust, a silent traveler seen by no one. In its frozen core, molecules slept. Carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, the building blocks of everything alive. They had been born in the heart of a star that had long since died, forged in fusion, expelled in a supernova, and locked into the ice that would become 3I/Atlas. It was not just a comet. It was a vessel, carrying within it the chemical memory of another universe of light. If one could trace its path backward, the line would stretch across the galaxy, curving through time and motion, back to a cluster of ancient suns near the galactic disk. Perhaps it came from there, from a system older than our own, one that had already lived its full span and fallen silent. Astronomers have theories. They speak of gravitational ejection, of binary stars colliding, of the thin disk and thick disk of the Milky Way, each a layer of history written in starlight. If 3I/Atlas came from the thick disk, then it is older than the solar system by billions of years, older than our oceans, older than our moon, older even than the stones that built our world. It is a messenger from a time when the galaxy was young and raw, when the first generations of stars were still learning how to die. Visualize the galaxy as a vast ocean, and the comet as a single grain of sand carried by unseen currents. It has wandered that ocean for longer than any species has existed on Earth. It has crossed between spiral arms, through nebulae that would one day give birth to other stars and other worlds. It has passed close to worlds that never saw life, worlds consumed by their suns, worlds frozen and lifeless, orbiting faint embers. And through it all, it moved on, silent, unknowing, unchanging. For every light year it traveled, another civilization rose and fell somewhere in the cosmos, unconnected and unaware. It was there when galaxies collided, when quasars burned, when supernovae turned night into eternity. It was there when the first atoms of our sun were still scattered dust. To think that such an ancient traveler would one day cross paths with Earth, with a species that could see it, name it, and wonder about its past, feels almost like destiny. But the universe does not believe in destiny. It believes in chance, in motion, in inevitability. 3I/Atlas did not come to deliver a message or a warning. It came because gravity said it must. Its path through the galaxy was written in the earliest seconds of its birth, carved into its velocity by the explosion that flung it outward. And yet, Within that inevitability, there is something miraculous, that a comet born of alien stars should pass close enough for us to witness, even for a moment, before vanishing forever. The data we collected, its speed, its chemical signature, its orbit, are the only traces of that immense story. Within those numbers, scientists glimpse the physics of other worlds, the ratio of carbon dioxide to water, the rare isotopes of nickel and cyanide. These are fingerprints of an alien chemistry, hints of the environment it came from. The spectrum of its light carries the whisper of its birthplace, a signature burned into its atoms billions of years ago. It tells us that its home star was ancient and rich in metals, that it lived fast and died violently. It tells us that 3I/Atlas was not born in darkness, but in fire. Perhaps, if we could follow it all the way back, we would find a system long gone cold. Its sun collapsed into a white dwarf, its planets shattered, its skies empty. And yet, in the emptiness, one could imagine fragments like Atlas still adrift, carrying with them the dust of life, the potential for beginnings yet unmade. That is the paradox of the universe. Every death spreads the ingredients of creation. Every catastrophe plants the seeds of something new. When 3I/Atlas entered our solar system, it became part of our story. For a brief instant in the timeline of eternity, its light was seen, its motion recorded, its chemistry understood. It gave us a glimpse of what lies beyond, not in distance, but in time. It showed us that the space between stars is not empty, but full of memory. And when it was gone, it left us changed. Not because it destroyed, but because it reminded us how small, how fleeting, and how connected we are to everything that has ever existed. The origins of 3I/Atlas are written across the galaxy, in the language of starlight and gravity. It came from the ashes of something ancient, and through its long, cold voyage, it carried that ancientness into our skies. It did not come to warn us or to save us. It simply came. And in that simple act of passing by, it told the oldest truth of all, that we are not alone, not in life or in death, not in creation or in destruction. We are part of the same endless motion. The same current that flung Atlas across the stars flows through us too, through our atoms, through our breath, through the fire in our hearts. Before 3I/Atlas came, the idea of interstellar visitors was little more than theory, a quiet probability buried in equations and models. Astronomers had long suspected that fragments from other solar systems must occasionally wander through ours, flung outward by gravitational encounters in the chaos of planetary formation. But for centuries, none had ever been seen. The night skies of Earth belonged to the familiar, comets bound to the sun, asteroids tracing predictable paths, all part of our celestial neighborhood. Then, in the autumn of 2017, everything changed. The first visitor was small, silent, and strange. It was named One Umuamua, a Hawaiian word meaning a messenger from afar arriving first. It appeared suddenly in the telescopes of the Pan-STARRS Observatory, a faint streak of light moving faster than any comet or asteroid ever known. Its orbit was hyperbolic, its velocity too great to be bound by the sun's gravity. It had come from beyond, from another star, crossing the darkness between systems before slipping uninvited into ours. Its shape defied understanding, elongated like a spindle or a shard of metal, tumbling end over end, reflecting sunlight in unpredictable flashes. It left no tail, no coma, no sign of outgassing, and yet it moved as if propelled by something unseen. The discovery ignited debate and imagination alike. Some scientists saw the ghost of a comet stripped of its ice, Others speculated about alien technology, a broken sail or a fragment of an artificial probe. But beneath the theories lay a profound truth. The boundary of our solar system was no longer a wall, but a window. One Oumuamua had proven that the cosmos is not static, that between the stars, countless wanderers drift, carrying with them the material histories of other suns. For the first time, humanity had proof that the galaxy's debris could touch our doorstep. 2 years later, the second messenger arrived, 2I/Borisov. Discovered by amateur astronomer Gennady Borisov in 2019, it was unmistakably a comet, a glowing nucleus surrounded by a coma, trailing a vast tail of gas and dust. Unlike Oumuamua, Borisov behaved like something familiar, yet its origins were undeniably alien. Its composition told a story. It contained volatile ices and gases almost identical to those found in comets of our own solar system. In that sameness, there was revelation. The chemistry of another star system mirrored our own, suggesting that the building blocks of life, of planets, of oceans and atmospheres, are not unique to Earth's neighborhood. 2I/Borisov was a bridge, proof that the processes of creation are universal, that every corner of the galaxy breathes with the same elements. By the time 3I/ATLAS was discovered in 2025, astronomers had learned to look for the signs of the extraordinary. They had refined their algorithms, trained their instruments to detect the faint whispers of hyperbolic motion. When Atlas appeared, the pattern was unmistakable. An interstellar trajectory, eccentricity greater than 1, velocity exceeding the escape speed of the sun. But unlike its predecessors, Atlas was alive. An active comet, venting gases rich in carbon dioxide and rare compounds not seen in typical solar comets. It was older, darker, and more complex. Its nucleus, though small, carried the residue of a time and place far beyond the reach of our imagination. Together, these three visitors formed a trilogy, a cosmic narrative written in dust and ice, in physics and probability. Oumuamua, the messenger of mystery, Borisov, the mirror of universality, and Atlas, the carrier of memory. Each one revealed a different truth about our galaxy. Oumuamua reminded us that we are not isolated. Borisov showed us that we are not unique. Atlas proved that we are not forgotten. From a scientific perspective, these interstellar objects transformed astronomy. They provided direct evidence that planetary systems across the galaxy constantly shed debris, fragments flung into the interstellar medium, destined to wander forever. They told us that the space between stars is not empty, but filled with relics, shards of worlds destroyed, building blocks of worlds yet to come. The chemistry of Borisov hinted that other systems may have oceans, clouds, and atmospheres much like ours. The carbon-rich composition of Atlas suggested that organic material, the foundation of life, can survive journeys across millions of years and light years. But beyond the data, there was something deeply human in our fascination with these travelers. We named them as we name gods and ghosts, projecting stories onto their paths. In them, we saw reflections of ourselves, wanderers moving through vast darkness, carrying fragments of our origins, uncertain of our destinations. The trilogy of outsiders became more than a scientific event. It became a mirror for existence. Oumuamua came quietly and left no trace, as if to awaken our curiosity. Borisov arrived in brilliance, a glowing, undeniable presence that taught us humility. And Atlas, the third and perhaps final visitor in this age, came bearing the weight of cosmic time, as if to remind us that all beginnings are also endings. When we look at their trajectories plotted across galactic maps, they form threads, faint lines intersecting the orbit of a single fragile world before vanishing into the black. The chance that any of them would pass so close to us is infinitesimal, and yet they did. That coincidence alone speaks of a universe dense with motion, rich with connection, where even the most distant fragments eventually cross paths. In their wake, humanity was left with more questions than answers. How many such objects wander the void between stars? How many carry the chemistry of life, the remnants of unknown civilizations, the seeds of future worlds? Could one of them, someday, bring not destruction, but renewal? The trilogy of Outsiders opened the door to these questions, and once opened, it could never be closed again. When future astronomers study the data, long after our civilization's traces have faded, they will see these three as the first whispers of a greater truth. They will understand that the galaxy is a place of constant exchange, of matter, of energy, of memory. The stars are not isolated islands, but nodes in an endless network of motion and inheritance. Between them, comets and fragments like Oumuamua, Borisov, and Atlas travel endlessly, carrying the stories of countless worlds. And perhaps, somewhere out there near a distant star, a telescope will detect a faint, fast-moving object, its trajectory unmistakably hyperbolic, its origin unknown. Scientists on that world will run their calculations and realize it comes from far beyond their system, from a place rich in carbon and water and metals. They will wonder, just as we did, whether it might have once passed near a blue planet orbiting a yellow star. They will give it a name, study its light, and feel that same shiver of awe, that same sense of connection. For the story of the Outsiders never truly ends. It is the story of the galaxy itself. Everything moving, everything touching, everything carrying the memory of everything else. What if we had known? What if the telescopes had seen it coming not months before, but decades? A faint blur of motion against the background of stars. A whisper of light crossing the threshold of our awareness long before the shadow fell upon us. What would humanity have done with time, our most precious and most wasted resource? The story of 3I/Atlas in another world might have been a story not of shock, but of preparation. And yet, as history has always shown, even when given warning, we rarely know how to listen. The year of discovery would have been quiet at first. A few astronomers exchanging data across observatories, their models whispering of something extraordinary, a hyperbolic orbit, inbound from the deep interstellar void. Early estimates would have placed it harmlessly distant, a curiosity, another interstellar messenger to study and admire. But as the calculations refined, the numbers would begin to shift. Each iteration tightening the trajectory, each update lowering the distance of closest approach. A 1 in a million chance becomes 1 in 10,000, 1 in 1,000, 1 in 100. By the time the probability reached certainty, it would have already changed everything. Governments would convene in secret first, as they always do. Behind closed doors, committees would be formed, simulations run, arguments made. The news would not break suddenly, but seep into public awareness like a slow, cold wave. Scientists on live broadcasts would speak of orbits and vectors, of kinetic energy and uncertainty. Politicians would urge calm. Economists would begin to calculate futures that no longer existed. In the streets, disbelief would turn to dread. But unlike sudden catastrophe, this one would unfold in slow motion, a countdown stretching across generations. Children would grow up under its shadow, their education shaped by a single looming truth: that one day the sky itself would descend. In the first decade, there would be unity. The dreamers and the builders would rise. Global space agencies would merge their efforts. NASA, ESA, Roscosmos, CNSA, ISRO, JAXA, all drawn together under a shared purpose unseen since humanity first walked on the moon. Telescopes would turn outward, tracking Atlas across the dark, measuring its spin, its mass, its composition. Artists would paint it, poets would name it. Engineers would design missions, impactors, deflection arrays, nuclear interceptors. For a while, there would be hope. We would tell ourselves that technology would save us, that intelligence and cooperation could outpace destiny. Spacecraft would be launched, dozens of them, each one a fragment of humanity's determination. Some would fail, some would vanish, some would succeed in reaching the comet, sending back images of an alien landscape, cliffs of frozen carbon dioxide, valleys of ancient dust, jets of vapor streaming into the void. The world would watch, mesmerized. For the first time, we would look upon a true interstellar object up close, a fragment of another system, another sun. In that moment, even as fear persisted, wonder would bloom. The scientists would speak of composition and structure, but philosophers would speak of meaning. Was this destruction or a cosmic handshake? A meeting written in the language of gravity long before life began. The attempts to alter its course would begin next. Massive engines launched into orbit, asteroid mining ships repurposed as planetary defense platforms, nuclear warheads retrofitted into kinetic penetrators, solar sails deployed to push, to pull, to plead with physics. For every success, 100 failures. The math was unforgiving. The energy required to deflect a mountain traveling faster than any bullet exceeded the capacity of all nations combined. And yet, humanity persisted. Every small change in trajectory became a symbol of resistance, a declaration that we would not go quietly. But time, as it always does, became the enemy. Years turned to decades, and the comet grew brighter. Children born under its shadow became adults who had never known a night sky without it. Its arrival became religion, prophecy, business, art. Some worshipped it as a divine messenger. Others denied it entirely, calling it fiction invented by governments. Nations fractured under the weight of truth. The privileged built underground cities and orbital shelters. The poor prayed to gods that had long since gone silent. The planet divided not between rich and poor, but between those who accepted the end and those who refused it. And yet, even amidst the fear, there would be beauty. Music written for the end of the world. Films capturing the last sunsets before the skies changed forever. Lovers making vows beneath the glowing trail of a comet that had traveled for billions of years to meet them. Humanity, in the face of annihilation, would become more human than ever before, fragile, brilliant, defiant. As the decades shortened to years and the years to days, the efforts would continue until the final hour. The last mission, perhaps named Prometheus or Gaia's Shield, would launch toward the approaching object, carrying not weapons, but words, a capsule filled with data, DNA, art, and the total memory of our species, a message encoded for any who might one day find it, drifting in the endless dark. It would say, "We were here, we tried, we dreamed," and when the end came, as it always must, it would not be in ignorance, but in awareness. Humanity would have watched its fate approach inch by inch, calculation by calculation, until there was nothing left to do but witness. Some would gather in cities, holding hands as the sky ignited. Others would retreat into silence, looking upward one last time. The final broadcasts would carry not panic, but poetry. Voices reading from ancient texts, music from every culture, the sound of oceans, of laughter, of wind, a farewell song sent into the cosmos. What if we had time? Perhaps we would have used it to build, to fight, to hope. Perhaps we would have wasted it in denial, division, and fear. But one truth would remain. Time does not change destiny, only how we meet it. The arrival of 3I/Atlas was never about survival. It was about understanding. To know that in the vastness of existence, we were given a moment to look at the universe and see ourselves reflected back. Finite, fragile, but aware. And in that awareness, even as the sky fell, there would be something immortal. The knowledge that we faced the inevitable not as victims, but as witnesses. That we looked at the stars and dared to ask why, even as they answered with silence. That we used our brief time to wonder, to reach, to dream. For in the end, perhaps that is what time was always meant for. There is a saying among astronomers, the sky is patient, but it is never still. For most of human history, that patience was our salvation. The heavens moved slowly, predictably, a clockwork so vast we mistook it for eternal. But the story of 3I/Atlas, and those that came before it, changed how we looked at the stars. It reminded us that even in the calmest night, the universe is in motion, and not all that moves is benign. From that realization was born a new era, the Age of Warning, a time when humanity finally learned to watch the sky not with wonder alone, but with vigilance. The origins of that vigilance trace back decades before Atlas's discovery. In the early 21st century, as our instruments grew sharper and our computers faster, astronomers began to grasp the scale of near-Earth threats. The dinosaurs had no telescopes, no radar, no warnings. But we did, and for the first time in history, we could predict the unthinkable. Projects like ATLAS, the Asteroid Terrestrial Impact Last Alert System, were born not from curiosity, but from fear. Designed in Hawaii, ATLAS scanned the heavens every night, capturing tens of thousands of images, searching for faint points of light that shifted between frames, silent travelers hurtling through space, some on courses that crossed our own. ATLAS was humanity's early warning sentinel. Its mission was simple but profound. Find the ones that could end us, and find them early enough to make a difference. From its telescopes atop Haleakala and Mauna Loa to its siblings across Chile and South Africa, the network created a global shield of awareness. It was the modern echo of ancient sky watchers, not priests reading omens, but scientists reading data, translating the dance of photons into predictions of life and death. But as the network expanded, a sobering truth emerged. Seeing was not the same as stopping. By 2022, NASA's DART mission, the Double Asteroid Redirection Test, had proven that humanity could, in principle, alter the path of a celestial body. A kinetic impactor traveling at over 6 kilometers per second had successfully nudged a small asteroid named Dimorphos, changing its orbit by mere minutes. It was a triumph, a proof that our species could, for the first time, influence the dynamics of the cosmos. But even in that moment of celebration, scientists knew the truth. DART worked because it had years of preparation and a small target. For something the size of 3I/Atlas, moving faster than any comet before it, no amount of impactors or nuclear warheads could change its fate. Still, humanity continued to prepare. The 2030 saw the creation of the International Planetary Defense Coalition, a a consortium of space agencies and private companies unified under one purpose: to give Earth eyes and hands. Orbital telescopes like NEO Surveyor began mapping the solar system in infrared, detecting faint heat signatures invisible to the human eye. Ground-based radar systems grew powerful enough to track objects smaller than city blocks at millions of kilometers. Artificial intelligence processed trillions of images, scanning for the slightest irregularities in motion. We were teaching machines to fear the sky, to do what our ancestors once did by instinct. And yet, the age of warning was not merely technological, it was philosophical. For every discovery of a new asteroid, there came a moment of humility. Each object reminded us how fragile our existence truly was, how thin the line between a thriving civilization and extinction could be. Scientists began to speak less about defense and more about understanding. Comets and asteroids were no longer seen as threats alone, but as storytellers, remnants of creation, carrying the chemistry of the early solar system. To study them was to study our own origins. Every impact that ever struck Earth had helped shape life as we know it. Catastrophe and creation were two sides of the same cosmic coin. When 3IATLAS was discovered, it became the ultimate test of that philosophy. The system that found it, Atlas itself, had fulfilled its purpose perfectly. It had seen the visitor coming. It had sounded the alarm. And yet, for all our preparation, the reality of its interstellar trajectory rendered us powerless. It was too fast, too massive, too alien. In that helplessness, humanity faced a painful paradox. The very system we built to save ourselves had delivered the final message. You were right to watch, but it is already too late. After Atlas, the meaning of planetary defense changed. The global space community did not disband, even as the comet approached. Instead, it transformed. The age of warning became an age of witnessing. Every telescope, every radar array, every scientific instrument turned to the sky, not to prevent, but to preserve. To record every photon, every wavelength, every moment of the event that would define the end of an epoch. We had spent a century learning to see. Now, at the edge of destruction, we would use that vision to understand. There is something profoundly human about watching the inevitable. The same species that learned to build fire and split atoms also learned to track comets across billions of kilometers. Not to escape them, but to know them. Knowledge had always been our shield. Even when it could not save us, the last generations of scientists worked not in despair, but in devotion, ensuring that the data would survive, encoded in satellites and deep space archives, transmitted toward distant stars. They wanted the universe to know that we had tried, that we had learned to see. The legacy of the Age of Warning was not in the systems we built, but in the awareness we achieved. It changed how humanity thought about its place in the cosmos. We began to understand that survival was not guaranteed, that existence itself was a fleeting privilege. The Earth was not a fortress, but a single point of life adrift in a galaxy filled with motion and memory. And yet, that realization did not bring despair, it brought meaning. For in the end, the Age of Warning was not about fear, it was about perspective. It taught us that vigilance is an act of love, that to watch the sky is to care for the world beneath it, that the same eyes which once looked upward for gods and omens now looked for comets and stars, still seeking connection, still searching for understanding. And perhaps that was the quiet victory of our species, that even when the countdown began, we kept looking up, that we chose not ignorance, but awareness, that we learn to read the messages written in the stars, not to change fate, but to recognize it when it arrived. Because in the vast, unending silence of the universe, to see is to exist. And in the final light of 3I/Atlas, humanity saw, completely, beautifully, and finally. When the final calculations were confirmed, there was no explosion, no siren, no cinematic moment of realization. The truth arrived quietly, in the sterile light of a control room, in the whisper of data streaming across a monitor. Scientists sat still as numbers filled their screens. The equations were simple, the conclusion absolute. 3I/Atlas would not miss. There would be no slingshot past the sun, no miraculous deflection. It was coming. And this time, there was no what if. The news spread first through private channels, encrypted transmissions between agencies, emergency meetings in dimly lit rooms, heads of state speaking in hushed tones. But secrecy could not hold forever. When the announcement finally came, it was not through rumor or leak, but through a press conference broadcast to every corner of the planet. The director of the International Astronomical Union stood before a sea of cameras, her voice calm but heavy. The object designated 3I/Atlas, she said, will intersect Earth's orbit. Impact probability, 100%. For a moment, the world went silent. It was as if time itself paused to listen. Then came the noise, the confusion, disbelief, denial. News networks filled the air with experts and speculation. Religions found prophecy in the data. Politicians made speeches about courage and unity, but behind their words was the unmistakable tremor of fear. Some countries declared martial law. Others opened their borders in a final gesture of compassion. Economies froze overnight, currencies collapsing under the weight of meaninglessness. The stock markets no longer mattered. The only currency left was time. On the streets, life fractured into extremes. Some lived as if nothing had changed, commuting to work, cooking dinner, paying bills, clinging to the illusion of normalcy. Others abandoned everything. Cities emptied as people sought higher ground, sacred sites, or simply open sky. Artists painted feverishly. Lovers married in crowded chapels, and parents told bedtime stories as if words could outlast worlds. There were riots in some places, silence in others. Entire neighborhoods turned into communal sanctuaries, strangers sharing food, stories, and comfort. Humanity, stripped of its future, returned to its oldest instincts, to connect, to hope, to hold one another. Religions both fractured and flourished. Some declared the comet a divine messenger, the hand of creation resetting the balance. Others saw it as judgment, or destiny, or liberation. New movements rose almost overnight, blending science and spirituality into something transcendent. People gathered beneath the night sky, praying not for salvation, but for understanding. The light of 3I/Atlas grew brighter with each passing week, a second sun on the horizon, visible even by day. It became a mirror in the heavens, reflecting both our greatness and our fragility. Governments around the world took different paths. Some focused on survival, constructing vast underground shelters, vaults buried beneath mountains and seas, filled with seeds, data, and DNA. Others turned their resources toward the stars, launching spacecraft that carried human archives, AI, and messages of farewell. Our final attempt to send our story into the future. Not for rescue, but remembrance. A generation of scientists worked until the last possible moment. Not to save Earth, but to make sure that somewhere, somehow, our existence would be known. For those who chose to stay under open skies, life took on an almost sacred rhythm. Cities became quiet. Traffic stopped. People spent their days watching the sky, talking to neighbors they had never spoken to, and feeling, for the first time, that everyone on Earth was truly connected, bound not by nations or ideologies, but by fate. Weddings were held in parks. Old friends reunited after decades apart. Families gathered around fires and screens to share their last stories. For once, there was no future to plan for, only the present to inhabit completely. The media evolved too. Broadcasts shifted from politics and celebrity to philosophy and art. Journalists spoke softly, not of fear, but of meaning. There were live streams of the comet's progress, constant and mesmerizing. A glowing wound in the fabric of the sky. Scientists answered questions with honesty. Poets recited verses about endings. Musicians composed symphonies for extinction. The final film festivals, the last novels, the closing concerts, all became acts of defiance, proof that even in our last days, humanity chose to create. And in the middle of it all were the children, the ones too young to understand orbital mechanics or cosmic inevitability. They played in the streets as usual, drawing comets with chalk, imagining themselves as astronauts. Teachers read them stories about stars and journeys, promising that even if Earth ended, humanity's spirit would travel onward. Parents wept quietly at night, holding their children close, whispering apologies and hopes into the darkness. The next generation would never grow old, but their brief lives would burn brighter than any before them. As the comet drew closer, it became more than an astronomical object. It became a symbol, an eye in the sky watching a species confront its reflection. Humanity saw itself not as conquerors or victims, but as participants in a vast, indifferent universe. Some despaired, others found peace. A few claimed to hear a kind of music in the static of the atmosphere, the hum of the universe folding back into itself. In the final days, the world was strangely calm. Power grids flickered out one by one. Satellites failed as radiation from the approaching body intensified. But there was no panic anymore, only quiet acceptance. People gathered on rooftops, beaches, and mountaintops, holding hands and watching the sky. Some prayed, some sang, some simply stared, as if trying to memorize the shape of existence before it was gone. And somewhere high above the noise, a radio signal pulsed through the void, a simple transmission carrying humanity's final message, broadcast in every language, every frequency, every direction. We were here. We saw. We understood. The comet continued its silent descent. Cities glowed beneath it like lanterns. Oceans reflected its light like glass. In its brilliance, humanity's story, our laughter, our wars, our art, our love, burned together as one final constellation. When history ends, it does not fade into darkness. It ends in light. It began with static. Not the kind that comes from malfunction or distance, but the kind that feels alive, like the whisper of the cosmos pressing its ear against the radio waves of a world about to go silent. Across every frequency, from the lowest AM band to deep space broadband arrays, humanity's voice was still there, trembling but unbroken. The final broadcast had begun. At first, it was chaos. Thousands of stations trying to speak at once. News anchors choking back tears, scientists dictating final observations, musicians tuning instruments in darkened studios. But slowly, a pattern emerged. It was as if the entire planet, for the first and last time, found harmony. The networks that had once carried advertisements and arguments now carried only a single message: connection. The signal was weak, fading in places where power grids had already failed, but the voice of Earth still carried through the noise. The United Nations Emergency Network took control of the transmission. Its logo flickered briefly before dissolving into the image of a spinning Earth, half lit by sunlight, half consumed by shadow. A voice, calm, measured, human, spoke. "This is Earth Mission Control. To all who are listening, wherever you may be, this is our last transmission. We have counted the hours, measured the trajectories, and we know the time has come. We do not send this message in fear, but in remembrance. We send it so that something of us may endure." The broadcast was picked up by every available transmitter: television stations, satellites, weather arrays, even amateur radio enthusiasts who had rigged their equipment to amplify the signal. For the first time, the planet spoke as one organism, one heartbeat echoing into the void. From Tokyo to Lagos, from New York to the Antarctic research bases, the transmission wove through the air like a final prayer. In the cities still powered, lights flickered rhythmically to the pulse of the broadcast. In homes and shelters, families huddled around screens and radios, the sound of the world's voice filling the air like a lullaby. The message shifted from official statements to something more human: clips, recordings, fragments of memory. A mother reading a bedtime story, the sound of ocean waves, children laughing, birds at dawn, the tolling of a cathedral bell. Humanity condensed into vibration, transmitted into infinity. Astronomers at the last surviving observatories continued to speak as long as they could. Their voices were calm, factual, almost tender. 3IATLAS is now visible over most of the northern hemisphere, one said, his voice trembling slightly. The coma extends nearly 600,000 kilometers. Estimated impact in 4 hours, 22 minutes. In another part of the world, a different team read poetry over the same frequencies. Though we fall, we have seen the stars. Though we end, we have known the light. As the comet filled the sky, cameras captured what the human eye could no longer process. The night turned to twilight, the horizon burning with a strange silver glow. Social networks, now reduced to flickering servers powered by emergency grids, filled with final messages, not of panic, but of peace. "We love you. Remember us. See you among the stars." The digital and physical worlds had merged into a single act of farewell. And then came the music. From orchestras to lone voices, from ancient chants to modern songs, humanity played its own requiem. Radio stations across continents synchronized, a global symphony broadcast to the stars. Beethoven, Bach, qawwalis, lullabies, chants from temples and mosques, the sound of drums from deserts and jungles. The frequencies layered into one another, forming a sound no composer could have written, the pure, unfiltered heartbeat of a species. In the International Space Station, long since uncrewed, now automated, a pre-programmed transmission began to loop. The crew had left their final words years earlier, recorded for this exact moment. "If you are hearing this," the commander's voice said, "we were the watchers of the sky. We looked back at Earth every day, and it was beautiful. Take care of the light." The ISS then transmitted one last image, the blue planet beneath a white arc. 3I/Atlas approaching. On Earth, the final moments of power were spent transmitting deep space data, radio waves encoded with DNA, art, languages, the entire human genome, the sound of rain. The Deep Space Network amplified the signal and directed it toward every nearby star system. Each dish turned slowly in synchrony, as if bowing to the heavens. For one brief instant, Humanity was louder than the background noise of the universe. The last broadcaster, a woman in her 40s, alone in a dim studio lit by the glow of a single monitor, stayed on air until the end. Her name wasn't important. Her voice was. She read messages sent in from across the world. We are watching from the Andes. The sky is white now. We can see it from Cairo. It's beautiful. We forgive. Her tone never broke. At the very end, she leaned close to the microphone and whispered, "If anyone out there ever finds this, know that we were here. We loved, we dreamed, we looked up, and that was enough." The transmission began to fade. One by one, the satellites went dark. The music slowed, dissolving into static. Across the planet, people listened until there was nothing left to hear. And then, in perfect silence, the sky ignited. For a moment, everything became light, brighter than any sunrise, more profound than any word. The oceans boiled, the mountains turned to glass, and the signal that had carried our final words stretched outward, racing ahead of the shockwave, traveling forever. Somewhere, millions of years from now, it will reach another star, another world. And perhaps there someone, something will pause, listen, and understand. They will not hear our names. They will not see our faces, but they will hear our hearts, pulsing through the static, saying across time and distance, "We were here. We saw. We understood." When the light finally faded, there was no sound. The atmosphere, once a living breath around the planet, had been torn apart, stripped down to silence. What remained of Earth no longer turned in the same rhythm. It spun slower now, wrapped in a shroud of dust and vaporized oceans. The continents had blurred into indistinguishable forms, molten scars glowing faintly beneath the haze. Where once there had been cities, there were glass plains. Where there had been forests, there were patterns of ash frozen in place, like shadows burned into eternity. But even in that silence, something persisted. It was not life as we knew it, not the pulse of a heartbeat or the echo of speech. It was the residue of memory, the physical traces of a species that had dared to look at the stars and call them home. Beneath kilometers of fused rock, in what had once been the archives of Geneva, a single vault remained sealed. Inside, protected by layers of radiation shielding and temperature control, were fragments of humanity's story. Silicon wafers etched with words, DNA strands suspended in crystalline vials, data drives encoded with the sum of our knowledge. The vault's systems would continue for millennia, slowly cycling power from geothermal vents, waiting for no one. A monument not to survival, but to remembrance. Elsewhere on the far side of what was once the Pacific Ocean, a satellite buried deep within lunar regolith still circled the dead Earth. Its sensors had gone blind, its instruments silent, but its transmitter pulsed weakly every few years. A beacon repeating the same message. This was Earth, home to life, home to dreamers. The signal drifted outward, spreading into interstellar space, faint but unending, like a heartbeat echoing long after the body has gone. Over centuries, the dust began to settle. The skies, once bright with fire, turned dim and gray. Rain, toxic, slow but persistent, fell and cooled the world. In the vast emptiness where the oceans had been, new minerals formed, new compounds fused under pressure. The planet, patient as always, began its long work of transformation. It did not grieve, for it had seen endings before. The Earth remembered not through emotion, but through renewal. Every atom that had once belonged to life, every molecule of carbon, nitrogen, and oxygen remained. Memory here was chemistry, In the absence of sound, wind returned. It whispered across the glass plains, carrying fragments of what had once been buildings. The curve of a bridge, the twisted metal of a tower, the faint outline of a city's grid etched into the ground. Seen from above, it was as if the earth still wore the faint fingerprints of its inhabitants, a map of where hope once stood. And far beneath the surface, where heat still lingered, there were pockets of persistence, extremophiles, microbes hidden deep in stone, unbothered by the apocalypse above. They multiplied slowly, unaware of the silence on the surface. They carried within their DNA the story of what had come before, the genetic echoes of every creature that had ever lived. In time, they would evolve, adapt, and rise again. The Earth had not died. It had only changed its language. Millennia passed. The continents shifted once more. The scar of impact became a new sea, filled with minerals and strange new chemistry. The comet's own matter, rich in carbon and alien isotopes, mixed with the remnants of Earth's crust. The two worlds became one. From destruction, a new geology was born, and within it, the faint potential for new biology. If any intelligence were to arrive from another world, another time, they would find not ruins, but riddles. They would find crystalline data drives buried in mountains, still humming faintly with energy. They would find satellites orbiting a pale, ghostly sphere. They would analyze the atmosphere, trace the isotopic scars, and know that something extraordinary had once existed here, a species that understood enough to leave behind evidence of its own passing. They might decipher the symbols, the circles, the patterns, the encoded words, and realize they were not random. They might reconstruct the sounds, the laughter of children, the rhythm of languages, the pulse of music. They might learn our story, not as a tragedy, but as an inevitable part of cosmic evolution. And if they listened long enough, they might still hear the faint echo of our final broadcast, stretched thin across the stars, the message that had left before the end came. Its frequency, once faint, would have traveled far, its energy slowly dissipating, but never dying. Somewhere in the deep interstellar dark, it might still be caught by a passing receiver, decoded by curious minds who would listen in wonder as voices from a dead world whispered through time, "We were here. We saw. We understood." Perhaps they would mourn us, or perhaps they would marvel. Perhaps they would see in our story the same pattern written across galaxies: creation, destruction, rebirth. They might realize that life, wherever it blooms, is not meant to last forever, but to illuminate the dark for a moment. And in that moment, to know itself. Earth would spin on, lifeless for ages, until one day life returned, slow, strange, and new. It would rise from the very ashes that had once buried us, from the chemistry of comet and ocean, from memory itself. New eyes would one day look upon the same stars, unaware of the ghosts beneath their feet. But the world would remember, in its rocks, its air, its quiet persistence. The story of humanity would live not in monuments or machines, but in the elements that once built our bones, our voices, our dreams. And so the Earth became its own archive, a planet that had witnessed intelligence and then silence, fire and then renewal. A planet that remembered through matter, not mind. A planet that carried, in its orbit and its scars, the echo of a single truth. That once there was a species that dared to understand its place in the cosmos. And when the next dawn finally came, when the skies cleared and sunlight fell once more upon cooling seas, it illuminated a world reborn. There were no humans to see it, no cameras to record it, no languages to name it. But somewhere, across the endless expanse of space, our signal still traveled, still spoke, still sang. The universe, vast and unfeeling, listened. And in the quiet after everything, memory, faint, eternal, unstoppable, whispered back. Long after Earth's final light had faded, long after the ashes had settled into quiet seas of glass and dust, the universe continued. Vast, indifferent, eternal, but in its infinite silence, nothing is ever truly lost. Every photon that ever left our world, every wave of sound that ever rippled through air, every pulse of radio that escaped into the cosmic dark, all of it still moved outward, endlessly. The universe does not forget. It remembers through energy, through motion, through the slow and ceaseless drift of light. Somewhere in the interstellar night, a single particle of radiation from Earth still travels, a remnant of a human heartbeat, a whisper from a song, a fragment of laughter. It will never stop. It will cross nebulae and clusters, glide past frozen moons, and dance through the magnetic fields of unseen worlds. Long after stars have burned out, that pulse will still be moving, the smallest, faintest signature of a world that once looked up and wondered. The universe remembers because it is memory. Every atom on every planet was once part of something else, forged in stars that lived and died billions of years ago. The iron in our blood was born in the heart of a supernova. The oxygen we breathed came from ancient stellar winds. Even our thoughts, fleeting and fragile, were powered by light born before Earth itself existed. And now all of that has returned, to dust, to plasma, to motion. Nothing is gone. Everything is transformed. The comet that ended us, 3I/Atlas, was not destruction. It was return. It carried within it the same cosmic materials that had created us in the first place. When it struck, it did not erase. It rewrote. The universe absorbed that act into its vast continuum of birth and decay, cause and consequence. From the galactic core to the edge of the void, every action leaves its trace. Every end folds into a new beginning. The universe does not mourn. It records. In the deep time that followed, stars were born where there had been none. The Milky Way spun on, its arms carrying the debris of our existence like a faint scar on its spiral skin. Other civilizations rose and fell in distant systems, unaware of the brief spark that had once illuminated a blue planet on the Orion Arm. But the photons from our cities, the faint light of street lamps, the flare of rocket launches, the glow of auroras, still traveled, crossing billions of kilometers each year. If an alien world looked toward our coordinates, they might still see us, not as we ended, but as we were, alive, bright, reaching upward. The universe does not speak, but if it could, perhaps it would say that nothing ever truly disappears, that every moment, no matter how fleeting, contributes to the grand equation. Energy conserved, motion continued, memory retained. Even the collapse of a civilization becomes part of the balance, another note in the symphony of time. In the far reaches of the cosmic web, beyond the boundaries of the visible universe, the echoes of human radio transmissions continue to spread, faint but organized, structured against the random noise. For any who might listen, they are unmistakably artificial, deliberate, filled with intention. Our first broadcasts, our last broadcasts, both now part of the same cosmic hum, woven into the background radiation like threads of intelligence in the fabric of the void. And so the universe remembers not in words, but in wavelengths. The electromagnetic whispers of a lost species now travel alongside the light of distant quasars, and the gravity waves of collapsing stars. Somewhere, the echo of Beethoven's Ninth Symphony collides with the radio hum of a pulsar. Somewhere else, a transmission of a weather report from 1953 drifts into a cloud of charged particles. The universe is a museum of echoes, and we are one of them. In time, even the galaxies will fade. The stars will cool, the black holes will evaporate, and the cosmos will stretch toward silence. But even then, in that unimaginable cold, the memory will remain, encoded in the structure of space-time itself. The vibrations of everything that ever happened will persist, etched into the quantum foam, frozen in the expansion of all that exists. And if there is meaning in that, if there is purpose to this endless remembering, it is this: that consciousness, however brief, changes the universe by witnessing it. Humanity existed for a cosmic instant, but in that instant we saw, we understood, and we left our trace. The act of awareness itself was the universe looking at its own reflection, if only for a moment. The universe remembers us not because we were powerful or permanent, but because we looked back, because we turned matter into meaning, randomness into beauty. We gave the cosmos a voice, our voice, and in doing so ensured that even as we vanished, something of us would continue to resonate. Billions of years from now, when the last photons from our final broadcast fade into the background radiation, the energy of those signals will still exist, diffused but eternal. And somewhere in that fading hum, hidden among the static of a dying cosmos, will still be the faint rhythm of our message, steady, patient, eternal. In the end, there was no explosion loud enough to echo through the universe, no cry that could pierce the silence of eternity. The end came quietly, not as an erasure, but as a transformation. The earth did not vanish. It became something else, something the stars could carry with them, something the cosmos could remember. Long after the skies dimmed and the oceans cooled, the light of humanity continued to move outward, a faint shimmer crossing the dark between galaxies. Every radio signal, every spark from a satellite, every pulse of thought and transmission we ever sent. They are still out there, traveling, expanding, becoming one with the great rhythm of the universe. If you could stand somewhere beyond time and look back, you might still see it, that tiny blue dot, glowing faintly in the infinite night. You would see the way its light once pulsed with life, with laughter, with curiosity. You would see a species that refused to accept the limits of their world, that turned their eyes to the heavens and asked, "What if?" We were dreamers wrapped in dust, stargazers made of atoms from dying suns. We built our homes from stone and steel, but our souls, they belonged to the cosmos. And though our time was brief, the mark we left was infinite. For in the vastness of everything, even a single moment of awareness can change eternity. The comet that ended us was not a punishment. It was a reminder that everything in creation is connected, that the same cosmic forces that destroy also give birth. 3IATLAS was part of the same story that gave us life, that sculpted our world, that filled our skies with stars. It did not come to end us. It came to continue the pattern, to turn endings into beginnings. And so we return, our oceans to vapor, our cities to dust, our atoms to light. We are scattered now, carried by solar winds and galactic tides, drifting across the same infinite void we once tried to understand. The molecules that once formed our voices will someday fall upon another world, and there, perhaps, they will bloom again. Maybe far in the future, new eyes will open beneath another sky. They will not know our names, nor the languages we spoke. But deep within their cells will be the memory of us, the remnants of our matter, the echo of our story. They will look to their stars and wonder just as we once did. And in that wondering, we will live again. Because memory is not confined to minds. It exists in the laws of physics, in the structure of time, in the persistence of light. The universe keeps everything: the laughter of children, the hum of cities, the quiet prayers of the lost. Energy does not vanish. It only changes form. And so do we. Across the endless dark, our signal still travels, the final broadcast from a dying world. Somewhere in the vast expanse of interstellar space, it still hums softly, the sound of a voice saying, "We are here, we are alive, we are human." Perhaps eons from now, it will reach another civilization, one that will pause, listen, and know that they are not alone. And when they do, they will hear our story, not of conquest or power, but of wonder. They will hear how, in the small span of our existence, we looked up at the stars and tried to understand them. How we built machines to chase them, poems to describe them, and dreams to reach them. They will hear that we fell as all things fall, but that before we did, we saw. The universe does not mourn our passing because it does not see death as an ending. It sees it as change, as the continuation of its infinite rhythm. Stars collapse into black holes, galaxies drift apart, and yet out of that darkness, new light is born. In that cycle, we are eternal. Our world may be gone, but our essence remains, in the radiation that crosses the void, in the dust that forms new stars, in the atoms that will one day build new life. Somewhere, someday, another sky will glow with sunrise, and in that light will be pieces of us, fragments of Earth reborn in another form. And so the story continues. The universe remembers. It carries within it the trace of every being that ever looked at it and wondered who they were. It holds our laughter, our music, our hopes. It holds the silence that followed. When you look at the night sky, even now, every star you see is a memory, light that left long ago, still traveling toward your eyes. And maybe, just maybe, somewhere out there, another being is looking up, seeing the faint glimmer of our world, long gone but not forgotten. For as long as light travels, as long as energy moves, as long as the cosmos expands, we will never be truly gone. We will exist in the dust between stars, in the radiation between galaxies, in the memory of the universe itself. And when the final darkness comes, when the last star fades, and even time begins to slow, perhaps, in that quiet, the universe will whisper to itself, remembering us. They were small, they were fragile, but they dreamed, and in their dreams, they touched the infinite. We were here, we saw, we understood,